Are we good to go, Jane? Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Economy in Place Overview Scrutiny Committee on the 24th of the 5th, 2023. My name is Nigel Smith, Councillor Nigel Smith. I'm Chair of the Economy in Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Can I welcome everyone to the meeting, which is a hybrid meeting. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded and will be available for viewing after the meeting. Should the live stream fail, the meeting will continue to be recorded and be available through the Council's website following its conclusion. Can I remind members that the translation facilities are available this evening for those wishing to attend on Zoom. Please choose your language of choice. For those wishing to speak in the chamber, please raise your hand. For those on Zoom, please use the raise hand function, and I will alternate between the speakers in the chamber and those online. For those attending remotely, please note that those in the chamber will be unable to use the chat facility. Committee members are reminded, committee members who are attending remotely are required to leave their camera on throughout the debate and when voting in order to maintain the integrity of the decision-making process. If you do need to leave the chamber temporarily, please pop a message in the chat function so that Democratic Services officers are aware and then let us know when you return. I expect everyone present and participating in the meeting to conduct themselves appropriately and be respectful to each other. That applies to members, officers, and anyone in the public gallery. The first item on tonight's agenda is appointment of chair. So I require, do we have any, appointment of vice chair. Do we have any nominations? Cynhorydd Austin.
Good evening and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to propose as Vice Chair of this committee, Councillor Chris Hughes.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Keith Easels. Okay, are there any other nominations? Okay, so I will put that to the vote. If members are happy, please show by raising your hands. You got that? Okay, any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That has been carried. Congratulations, Chris. We will now move on to the second item, which is apologies for absence.
Just two apologies, Chair, from Councillors Simon Croft and Alan Hunter.
Okay, thank you. I also have obviously apologies from Jane, who has sadly suffered the loss of her mother, and I'm sure, Dawn, should I say. You know, she is in all our thoughts, and I just want to let the committee members know that the chairs and vice chairs have also sent some flowers to her and her family. We'll now move on to declarations of interest, the Code of Local Government Conduct. I want to remind members that they must declare the nature of any declared personal interests. Do we have any personal interest to declare? No. Okay, thank you very much, members. We move on to urgent matters, which I don't think there are any.
No urgent matters, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to item 5, which is the minutes, and that is to approve and sign as a correct record the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 24th. That's wrong date. What's the date of the previous meeting, Sean? Bear with us, members.
19th of April.
Which are the minutes of the 19th of April, 2023, and they're on pages 4 to 8. I presume members have had a look at the minutes. Councillor Chris?
Chair, can I move that they're a correct record?
Thank you very much, Christopher. Do we have a seconder for those minutes? Cynhorydd, thank you. If members are happy, could you please show by raising your hands? Yep, those minutes have been confirmed. Thank you very much, members. Then we will move on to the next item, which is receive the minutes of the local area forum, local area forums for information. And the first one is local area forum North, which was held on the 20th of April, pages 9 to 12, and these will be presented by Councillor Harry Saville. Thank you, Harry.
Yes, thanks, Chairman, and forgive me whilst I just got my microphone sorted out there. Members will obviously see the minutes from local area forum North, which are presented to the committee for note. If members have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm happy to propose that we note the minutes.
Thank you, Harry. Do we have a seconder for those minutes? Councillor Carroll, thank you. If members are happy, could you please show by raising your hands? Okay, that's like a full house to me. Thank you, members. We will now move on to local area forum South, which was again on the 20th of April, pages 13 to 16, and these should be presented by Councillor Liz Roberts. Liz online? Doesn't look like it.
No, Chair, she's not
Okay,
online.
Austin, Canhorrig Austin, would you be happy to?
Yeah, dim problem o gwbl.
No problem at all. I was present at the last meeting of the South Forum, and it is a pleasure for me to propose that the minutes before you are accurate.
Thank you, Austin. Do we have a seconder? Canhorrig near? Thank you. Members, if you could please show if you're happy. Lovely. Thank you very much, members. So item 9 is to review the forward work programme, and these will be presented by Jane Jones, our committee services officer. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Chair. I'm presenting the forward work programmes on behalf of Dawn Hughes, Conway's Scrutiny and Committee Services Officer. And I'm going to turn my camera off. I hope you don't mind. I'm clearly having technical difficulties. Bear with me. So before you is the forward work programme for Economy in Place and the combined forward work programme. And currently I have no updates to report, Chair.
Short and swift. Thank you very much, Jane. Members, do you have any questions on the forward and combined forward work programme? Councillor Michael?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, with recent developments in the Kimmel Bay and Towing flood defence scheme, I'm wondering whether that should come back to us with the recent updates at a later date that's more applicable with the reduction in the scheme. I don't know whether you've got thoughts on that, but other than that,
Well,
I'm happy with as it is.
I had a conversation with officers this afternoon, and I think that the scheme as originally proposed will be going forward. So we'll have to wait and see. I think we may have some report coming out in a few weeks' time that we can go through. But thank you for
We'll just
raising
keep
that.
a handle on that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Michael. Councillor Mandy Hawkins, did you have a question to raise, or were you just adjusting your screen?
You're on mute, Councillor Mandy.
Sorry about that. I was just adjusting my screen. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Mandy. All right, members, so it seems that we seem to be happy with the forward and combined forward work programme. I need a proposer and seconder for their adoption.
Happy with that.
Councillor Harry and Councillor Michael. If members are happy, please show by raising your hands. Thank you, members have been approved. Okay, then we'll move on to item 10, which is questions for cabinet members, which I haven't received any thus far.
There are
Well,
no questions, Chair.
Thanks, Jane. So we'll move on to item 11, which is consider reports by the Head of Economy and Culture on the following matters. An update on the progress in the delivery of Crew Conway, Creating a Spark, the cultural strategy for Conway County Borough 2021 to 2026. And those are on pages 67 to 81 in the report. This will be introduced by Cynhorydd Aaron Wynne, the Cabinet Member. Good evening, Aaron. Thank you for attending this evening.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Ia, na i
Thank
ddechrau.
you very much, Chair. I shall begin before I hand you over to Helen, who shall take you through the report. To those of you who are new to this council, you may not have come across the Creu Conwy strategy before. The vision for the strategy is to make use of our culture here in Conwy to create the spark for economic growth and well-being. The strategy aims to use culture to connect communities, to add vibrancy to town centres, and to support health and well-being outcomes. I believe that culture is of key importance in allowing us to develop our local economy, and we should take full advantage of the cultural assets we possess in the county. Having said that, the continuous cuts in the budget poses a risk to the strategy. Any further cuts may impair our ability to accomplish the strategy. I believe it's important for you as members to be aware of that risk. I'd like to thank in particular our dedicated and hard-working officers for their work in developing and implementing this ambitious strategy. I now let Helen take you through the report. Thank you very much.
Aaron. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you all hear me all right? Okay. I shall take you through the key points of the report then. So as Aaron has just explained, Creu Conwy strategy has the vision that culture creates the spark for economic growth, well-being and connection. So the strategy, which went through a process of public consultation, was approved at the end of 2021. So this report is just an opportunity really to allow members to be cited on some of the key areas of work that the strategy has been undertaking since it was approved. So the main work that has been done in 2022 during the first year of the strategy, we were successful in being awarded funding from the UK Community Renewal Fund, which enabled us to do quite a lot of research and development work and some feasibility studies and further engagement to make sure that the strategy's delivery plan and its aims and aspirations were evidence-based, and that we'd identified the right priorities to focus our attention on. We also spent 2022 devising a governance model for delivering the strategy as well. And that governance model I'll mention in brief in a few moments. And a lot of work has gone on with fundraising as well. So so far the strategy has attracted £600,000 in external funding to enable us to pilot and deliver some of the initial projects under the strategy, and a further £1 million or just over £1 million worth of funding applications are currently either pending or in preparation. So one of the important points that I was hoping to make this evening to members is around the agility of the strategy and the fact that we're really keen to make sure that the strategy is responsive and agile in terms of the environment in which we find ourselves at the moment and how that differs to the environment in which the strategy was first written and signed off. So the delivery plan, which we're presenting in this report pack, the delivery plan has focused and sort of pivoted slightly in the direction of looking at how we can support communities during the cost of living crisis and during the difficult period that people are experiencing at the moment, by focusing our energy on supporting well-being through creativity and through cultural participation. So I'll move on to explain in a moment, but a lot of the work we've been doing in the first half of this year has been looking at how we can strengthen our links with colleagues in social care and education, and how we can look to use the transformational power of culture and cultural participation as a way of reducing burdens on other areas of the organisation. So that's become a real key element of our work, and will be for the remainder of the delivery of the strategy. So the recommendation obviously is that members note the progress that we've made to date on the strategy. We are proposing that the delivery timeframe be adjusted to allow us to really embed the impacts that we want to realise. So we are suggesting that the strategy end point extends from 2026 to 2028 to give us additional time, partly to source the additional funding that we need and to deal with the capacity issues that the current situation has presented, but also the wellbeing focus and the partnership development that we are looking at, we believe needs more time and more dedicated resource over a longer period of time. So just to take you through then, as Councillor Aaron has already said, the strategy is all about recognising the transformational power of culture for economic renewal and community wellbeing. We are very much about harnessing the power of culture because we know how effective culture is in connecting communities. We know how culture does bring people together. It does make connections across communities, and it really does support a number of health and wellbeing outcomes for our citizens. When we put the strategy together, we adopted some organising principles around providing playful and adventurous ways to make culture a part of everyday life in Conwy. So those principles are intended to democratise access to the arts, as we say, which is essentially bringing culture to people and bringing arts and creativity to people in a way that's fun, relatable, unintimidating, accessible. So it's all about making sure that cultural experiences and the arts are something that's part of everyday life. It's everywhere, all around us. It pops up in unexpected places, and isn't something that you only access if you're of a particular socioeconomic catchment area, or if you enter into a museum or gallery space. So what we've done with the delivery plan and the work we've done this year is we've organised our work streams around people. So that's been looking at what are the capacity building needs that we have within the cultural and creative sectors? What are the networking opportunities? Where do we need to create better connections between creative and digital businesses? Also looking at, as I mentioned, developing culture for wellbeing projects that help us to really make a substantive contribution to the preventative agenda. And it's also about that governance model I mentioned earlier, where we have focused on creating a cultural partnership that we're referring to as Craig Conwy Partnership, which is basically a strategic forum that has membership from across the creative and cultural sector in Conwy. So it's a really fantastic cross-agency, cross-body group that comes together quarterly now to help really steer the direction of the strategy and make sure that the collaboration is working across more systems than just within the local authority sphere. And that's been very effective to date. But we've also, in terms of place, we're really focused on taking a placemaking approach. So this is really taking learning from the work that was done in Colwyn Bay over a few years, funded by the National Lottery Great Places scheme, to look at the culture and heritage of place as really key drivers for regeneration. So one of the things we've acknowledged and that we recognise as really key within the not just the corporate plan but the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act is around collaboration and integration being an effective part of devising and delivering strategies of this nature. So with that in mind, we have worked over the last year to create town teams across what we're calling town teams across the 5 bigger towns in the county: Abergele, Llanrwst, Llandudno, Colwyn Bay and Conwy. And what we've done there is we've tried to create another tier of activity where we are encouraging the community to take ownership of the needs and priorities that are based on the assets in their area, that are based on the distinctive cultural identity of that location, to come up with their own action plans, so that we're not just determining from a top-down approach what those projects need to look like and what the interventions need to be at our place level. And also programme. So this was all about looking at events. Now, because of the current financial situation, we didn't deliver major events at the scale that we perhaps might have anticipated at the start of the strategy's life cycle. So what we have been looking at through the programme element of the strategy to date is we've been doing quite a lot of work around capacity building and mentoring. We have delivered some pilot projects, and I'll move on to those briefly in a moment. But a lot of the event-based activity that we've been doing has been working in, for example, in library settings or in smaller cultural institutions and smaller venues, putting on a programme of activities that have, again, enabled people to access something new, to connect with new people, and to get out and come back into public life after the pandemic. So on progress to date then, as I mentioned, we've attracted some funding already. We've secured just £250,000 from the Spirit of 2012 Volunteering Cities Fund, which is enabling us to roll out the Amdani Cultural Volunteering Project, which is launching next Tuesday, the 30th, at the Culture Centre. For anyone who would like further information, I can send the Eventbrite link for you to book a place to come along to that. But that project is a real pioneering kind of flagship project for the strategy, which will run from now until the end of March 2025. And through the lifetime of that project, we will be working with a minimum of 300 individuals who will be coming to cultural volunteering opportunities and helping to restore and really build the capacity of the cultural volunteering economy in Conwy. So we're really excited about that. And the strategy has also brought in just under £100,000 to support an enhanced Young Creatives programme, which is now operating under Craig Conwy Ifanc banner. So that's a really ambitious and important range of activities, which is being supported through the Arts Council for us to offer creative arts pathways for people from the age of 0 to 25. And we're already having some really exciting and really promising conversations with colleagues in social care, including the Strengthening Families teams, around how we can make sure that opportunities like Craig Conwy Ifanc is being offered to families that will benefit most at an early stage of intervention, because of the known benefits of cultural participation for promoting emotional well-being and helping to strengthen family connections. So as I said, we've developed the strategic cultural partnership, and there's a list which I won't go through of the representation on that partnership in terms of partner bodies across the county and North Wales. Building capacity and skills, networking opportunities across the cultural sector. So there's the Amdani project that I mentioned. There's also a range of other activities that we're engaged in at the moment, which is around supporting our town teams, but also their wider networks, to access the opportunity to see what's going on in other areas, to share knowledge, to collaborate, and to make connections across the UK and across Europe, to learn from projects that are being carried out in other parts of the UK and Europe that relate to what we're doing here. So we've been holding various toolbox talks and seminars, both internally within Conwy, to support colleagues to adopt a culture-led approach to their projects and to their work within Conwy, but also for external organisations as well. And that's included learning journeys, and also what we're calling our annual cultural conversation, which is effectively a large collaboration and networking event that we're aiming to hold on an annual basis to help really strengthen the sector and continue to create and maintain those links between different organisations. As I mentioned earlier, we used our UK Community Renewal funding to enable us to carry out a full review of all of the culture activity that is going on in Conwy at the moment that is used to support wellbeing, because we were aware quite early on that there is an awful lot going on within Conwy, both across economy and culture, but also more broadly with our partners with our colleagues in social care. in education. So we were really keen to really map out what's going on and what are the benefits and who is working together and who perhaps could be collaborating and isn't at the moment. And we're using that report as a really useful starting point and a blueprint for developing the links and relationships that we are working on at the moment. Young creatives I've mentioned. Town teams I've mentioned. We've also been doing a lot of work on Welsh language. Obviously Welsh language is a really it goes without saying, or it should go without saying, that that Welsh is an integral part of the strategy and what it wants to achieve. It's impossible for us to actually deliver anything under Craig Conway without making Welsh language something that sits at the core of all of our aspirations under the strategy. So part of our community renewal funding has involved a study looking at what are the needs of our hospitality and tourism sector around how to use the Welsh language to benefit the business offer, to build a sense of place, to promote brand, to promote the depth and quality of the visitor experience. So we worked with Mentor Iaith and others and spoke with more than 70 businesses and 200 visitors to establish what sorts of support needs they have around using more Welsh language in their offer, and we've produced a toolkit for business off the back of that. But we also have a project plan which has been integrated into the overall delivery plan. Other projects we've been testing is Oriel Moor, which again was a feasibility study, which is now, we hope, moving on to delivery, where Paul Sampson, who is our amazing curator at Oriel Colwyn, who's been working with our colleagues in ERF to look at how we can integrate an outdoor photographic gallery to span the coastline of the county, to integrate with the current coastal defence and improvement works that are going on. So it's just thinking at an early stage of development, how can we integrate culture and a cultural infrastructure into these projects to really enhance that experience and that sense of place. So that work is ongoing. Other stuff that we've done last year that we're also now going to be building upon this year, subject to the SPF bid that we are currently working on being successful, is Cascley, which was a mapping project that we undertook across the whole county to try and produce a detailed picture of what it actually is that culture means to people living in Conwy or visiting Conwy, because of course it's actually quite a nuanced thing and our perceptions of culture are very personal. So we spent time with communities asking them to share with us their tangible and intangible cultural heritage and identity, their stories, place names, mapping locations, objects, memories, whatever it may be, and they've all been pulled together onto a digital map, which we're now going to be adding to over time and through the lifetime of the project. We've also worked with a number of partners to deliver Open Doors I'm sure you're all familiar already with Open Doors, but it's Cadw's annual celebration of architectural built heritage. So we've sort of revisited that with Craig Conway under the principles of playful and adventurous programming, and we actually brought some activity alongside the festival that brought some really unusual and exciting activity into some new locations. So, for example, we had Ed Formula, who is a international beatbox champion, doing a performance in the library space at the Culture Centre. So just to give you an idea of a really different and fresh approach to how we deliver what have been relatively year-on-year traditional festivals in the past. We've also delivered the first of what we hope will be many Winter Sounds Music Festival, which was hugely successful after some delay owing to the Omicron COVID variant and quite a lot of delay. Eventually, we were able to hold 13 headline gigs and sellout events, free ticketed events across all kinds of different locations, from old churches to pubs to library spaces, and it was just a really fantastic opportunity for us to work in collaboration with cultural organisations across the county to really support our local music industries, but also to raise the profile of the county And as a part of that work, we were able to use Arts and Business Cymru funding to provide a mentoring programme for young adults interested in a career in the music industries. So we've done quite a lot of development and capacity building work there, and we are really excited to continue that work in early 2024 will be the next festival, and we're looking to continue that on an annual basis. We've also been delivering a range of digital skills and employability projects, including working closely with Tape Music and Film to extend and build upon the Imagine Trail heritage app that was created as part of the Imagine Colwyn Bay project. And that's enabled us to work with a number of young people who weren't currently accessing any training or weren't in employment. And 21 of those individuals have actually moved on to further education or employment through the project. And that's exactly the sort of result that we want to see built upon over the next 3 or 4 years as we continue with the strategy. So as I mentioned earlier, we have been through public consultation in the creation of the strategy, but then also because of the research and evidence building work throughout 2022, we've also been able to work with yet further organisations. And I think it's really important to say that, going back to what I was saying about co-production and collaboration, that the delivery plans for each of the town teams and the work we're doing with the overarching plan for Craig Conwy this is very much an iterative process, and that we are constantly learning from the engagement and the conversations that we're having with the creative and cultural sector individuals and organisations that we're working with, because it's really important to have that responsive and fluid approach, I think, to how projects evolve over time and to how needs and priorities change as well. What we're looking at now going forward is that we are applying for funding from the Shared Prosperity Fund, which we really do hope will be successful, as that will enable us to continue to build upon and to continue to deliver the work that we've started so far. What we would like to do is to lever in the SPF funding to enable us to support the town teams to continue to develop their projects and ideas, and to integrate their aspirations and to integrate creativity into the place planning and community planning processes going on in each of those towns. And we also want to be able to build upon the piloting and initial work that we did last year to really create that integrated and vibrant offer across our various buildings. We've also applied to the Arts Council Wales as part of their investment review with a request, quite a substantial funding request. However, that fund is extremely oversubscribed this year, so we're not sure really what the outcome's likely to be for that. I hope I haven't gone on for too long, but we really did feel that it was important to share the work we've done so far, and just to make members aware of the delivery plan that we've produced, but also just to emphasise, firstly, what I said around well-being and supporting people during the cost of living crisis, but also the delivery plan that we've provided with the agenda pack is also taking into consideration lots of other emerging and really important work that's going on at the moment around, for example, the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan and the significant amount of work that needs to be done there, both on a organisational wide level, but specifically in terms of our cultural offer and the work that we do in terms of interpreting and telling the story of the collections that we hold at the archive and museum collections, for example. So a lot of that work is now integrated into the delivery plan. I won't go into the delivery plan in detail unless you want me to. That would probably take quite a while, but if you do have any questions specifically about the delivery plan, then I am happy to answer them. Or my wonderful colleague Helen Jackson is here, and she can also answer questions about the project plan if you have any. So yeah, I think that's everything. I don't know if Sarah, you wanted to come in at all to wrap up, or should we hand back to Councillor Aaron?
Thank you, Helen. Thank you so much for that really good overview of all the work that the teams have been doing.
As Helen said, this is really important work. It's not just during the cost of living crisis, but just in general. We're working closely with colleagues in social services and education, and working to ensure that culture delivers for the outcomes of the corporate plan and wellbeing of future generations. And there's so much work going on. Helen's just kind of touched on the tip of the iceberg of all the projects that we've got running. But ultimately, what we are trying to do is make sure that the work we do reduces the impact for our colleagues in social services and in education by delivering projects that impact on people's mental, physical well-being, encourages skills building in young people that they can transfer into schools, and also have an impact on the economy. Obviously, we're economy and culture service, really important that the work we're doing is bringing people into the area, helping businesses, and making a difference within our towns and villages. So as Helen says, Helen and our colleague, the other Helen, doing amazing work, and they're happy to take any questions from members this evening. Diolch.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you, Helen, for the most excellent update on the wonderful work that you and your colleagues in the department are doing. I'm going to open it up to the floor, and our first speaker is Cathy Augustine. Councillor Cathy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much, Helen, for taking us through that incredible piece of work. It's lovely to hear something so positive, and it's obviously in reaction to many issues. It touches on so many things that are important to our daily lives and our future, so thank you so much. I was glad to hear you say that this is an iterative process and there are parts of the strategy and the work plan that are emerging. I can imagine that's the case because it's huge. Also really pleased to hear you mention the Anti-Racist Wales Action Plan. I went to a summit last week in Cardiff on implementing that in our organisations. So the question I actually wanted to ask, you mentioned 5 town teams. So will there be opportunities other than for Conwy Town in our local area west, for example? So Pema Mawr has a fantastic museum, for example, a number of artists, writers, musicians, architects. How can they get involved? We also have 2 primary schools. So I just wondered how that is going to come out into the hinterland, as it were, other than the 5 key towns, so that we're not excluded.
Thanks, Councillor Cathy. This is a common issue, really. I think the town team structure can actually be a little bit problematic, sometimes a bit contentious when it's explained, because it sounds as though we're focusing solely on those kind of town centre areas or high streets, but that's very much not the case. We had to locate ourselves somewhere in space, so obviously we've got those as kind of central points, if you like, but it's a hub and spoke model where we are working within the wider area. And I think what's really key, and to answer your question properly, and especially in light of the way that we're framing things for the shared prosperity work that we're doing, we see this as very much about that wider network of cultural institutions and organisations. So, as you know, as we're working very closely, I know already, Councillor Cathy, in support of organisations like Pema Mawr Museum and Pema Mawr Community Library, 2 really important and wonderful institutions in Pema Mawr. And I was in Pema Mawr just 2 days ago at the museum, collectively planning what we're putting into the SPF bid to support that wider network. So I think what is really important to point out is that the strength of all of the collaboration, networking and development opportunities lies in making sure that it's around peer knowledge and peer knowledge transfer. So, for example, Pema Mawr Museum are kind of sector leaders, if you like, within the independent museum sector up here in North Wales, and they've come on in such great strides in the last 5 years. And I think what's really key is that Pema Mawr are positioned at the museum, are positioned so that they are then able to share their knowledge and experience with other organisations at a different stage of development. So all of that is built into our capacity building work. So there's the kind of raising capacity element that extends right across the county, and all of our organisations working in the cultural sector, irrespective of whether they're in those core town areas. But also we're integrating activities themselves as well. So for example, Craig Conwy Ifanc is looking to run some activity at Llanfyfechan Community Library, which will be small but perfectly formed activity, but it obviously we'll find a way to deliver something really, really great there. And of course, looking back over last year, one of our most successful and most popular event under Winter Sounds was actually in Llanfyfechan at the Town Hall. So, you know, it is very much a county-wide approach that we're taking here, but we just needed to find somewhere to anchor ourselves in space. And obviously some of the projects that we're looking at will very much be about town centres, i.e. high streets that are struggling, and the need to animate the public realm with festivals and activities, but it's certainly not exclusively limited to those towns. I hope that's not too rambling.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
Fantastic, Helen. I was pretty sure it would not be limited and exclusive, but thank you for that clear explanation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cathy. Next speaker, Councillor Chris Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. Before we go into the debate, can I thank members for their support earlier today in the election of Vice Chair? I want to thank both Helens because the work they're doing on the Crew Conway is absolutely fabulous. I've been a member of the Colwyn Bay Town team, where I represent a number of community groups that I'm involved with, and the opportunity to share with our ideas with others and talk with others, I think has been fantastic, and it's certainly helped us an awful lot in some of the things we've done. I think that community groups are going to be really key to this, and you know, I think certainly the community groups in Colwyn Bay that I'm involved with, prior to creation of the consultancy, we pulled in about £250,000 worth of funding for some significant projects on Conway land. When the consultancy came in, it made it a little bit difficult, because where we've struggled is getting funds to actually do the design work or improvement and things like that. So we've been stuck with little projects, but I'm hoping that as one of the funding bids through the shared prosperity, will provide a key fund or something that will enable that, because getting money to deliver projects has not been a problem for the groups that I'm involved with, but it's the development of those groups, those projects we've had problems with. That said, I can't fault the work that the group are doing so far, and certainly the work that the two Helens have done. Whenever we've had an issue, whenever we've had a problem, you know, we've had the answers. And I think this is a fantastic strategy which has huge potential, but the potential actually relies on us as elected members and the work we do within our community to bring forward ideas and projects and schemes. And we've heard today how this can work alongside social services and youth services, but there is huge scope for us to work with our environmental services as well around this. And, you know, there are also significant potential economic drivers, and I would urge members to get involved in community groups in their ward and bring ideas forward to the culture strategy, because there is some big opportunities there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chris. Our next speaker is Councillor Harry Saville.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'll echo the points that Chris has just made about the aspirations of Craig Conway as a strategy. It's absolutely fantastic. I think we'd all recognise the importance culture can play as an economic driver, particularly around tourism. That's fundamentally important. Before I go on, I'm conscious of the report is that we note the progress of Craig Conway, so I'm happy to propose that now. But I've got two questions. The first, probably for officers, perhaps Helen. The second, probably for the cabinet member, and they're both around very much the financial or economic climate we find ourselves in. So I was conscious during the presentation, there was reference made to wanting to move away from a major offence strategy or not focus on that quite as much. What I wanted to know is, we've had a very high level overview, in detail, which community level events and large community level events are being supported. I mean, I'm thinking in the case of Llandudno, we have the Victorian Extravaganza. I understand that they don't necessarily receive tons of support from this council, so I'd be interested in understanding that. And I'm sure, Chairman, you'll have examples in town in Kimmel Bay and the east of the county, and the Vice Chair will in Colwyn Bay, of large events that are driven by the community. So I'd be interested in understanding in detail which large scale community driven events are supported through this. The second query I had was around cultural grants. Now, obviously, Craig Conway is focused on promoting culture as an economic driver. I'm conscious that when we set the budget a couple months ago, one of the budget reductions we approved to look at was a reduction in cultural grants. It's a £32,000 budget reduction. I understand the total budget was £32,000, so it's not really a reduction in cultural grants, it's more a cut. Not even a cut, even a complete cessation of that service. But ordinarily, when we make budget reductions that require democratic approval, they go through council and then they come to scrutiny later for scrutiny to assess and decide whether or not they want to put them through. I understand that this reduction has already been made without it coming to scrutiny. And I'm conscious, obviously, the time has been available for us to discuss culture and the importance of it. We're doing it this evening. No reference has been made to this budget reduction this evening. So I'd be interested in understanding why this committee has been short-circuited as far as this budget reduction is concerned, and in understanding the impact of it. So 2 questions there. Hope someone can answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harry. Helen, have you got any answers?
Yes, well, I was going to suggest that Sarah might want to respond in terms of events. Obviously, the events, there is a separate events strategy in prep at the moment as well, which obviously integrates with this. Certainly, and I might not have explained very well or used the wrong wording. We're not moving away from major events. It was more to do with the fact that when the cost of living crisis hit, we decided to focus our energies upon grassroots support and well-being, being mindful of the fact that that obviously larger events would require more investment in the first place for us to deliver. And obviously there are major events. There is a major events team, and major events are a part of the event strategy as well. So it's just making sure that we don't sort of get confused about which area of work we're focusing on. I don't know if Sarah, did you want to come in and make more sense of it than I am?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's exactly it. So there is definitely an ambition to help support local events and local organisations to run their events. So I think there was a really good example of that in Colwyn Bay. Was it last weekend? Weekend before? I can't remember. The days are merging into one, where we had Prom Extra, which was an event organised by Events Conway, with all sorts of services and departments from across the county involved with that, as well as community groups. And then the next day there was the first Colwyn Bay Pride event, which was organised by Together for Colwyn Bay. So the events team worked alongside Together for Colwyn Bay, and for example, it was great that they were on the same weekend because it meant the infrastructure was there and they were able to work together on that. So I think that's what we're driving at with the event strategy. Is very much still there. The culture team and the events team absolutely work hand in glove with each other. But we also have an ambition to help community groups and community organisations run events as well. Now, all of our work is subject to financing, obviously, as was mentioned right at the beginning of this. We are sitting in a very difficult time financially, as members will be only too well aware, as you are the ones that have to tackle that difficult budget situation. So the cultural teams and the events teams both had to offer up significant savings in the last budget round, and we are aware that we are not going to be immune from that in the future. So as Helen has mentioned today, we are doing a huge amount of work on bringing in external grants and funding. It's a very difficult landscape there as well. Everybody is doing the same thing, and Helen mentioned the Arts Council revenue funding review. I don't know anybody that works in an arts organisation in Wales that has not applied for that funding, so hugely oversubscribed. But we're being very creative and innovative. The power of having our economy and culture teams all together means that we are able to put together some really amazing projects where we've got all sorts of partners, all sorts of buy-in and outcomes across the board. So that's really helpful. So Councillor Harry, you asked about the grants for external organisations. We did honour all the grants for the last financial year in the end, although there was a period when we really thought that we wouldn't be able to. But we will not, because of the huge cuts that we have had to face, we will not be able to do that again. I'm afraid it was looking at the cuts. Are we looking at jobs? Because a lot of our delivery, and in fact most of our cultural delivery, comes through external grants. So do we make people redundant? And there is a cost to that, both in terms of the immediate costs and the ongoing costs, because that would reduce the work we deliver. Or did we look at the external elements of the funding that we had? So unfortunately, that's why those grants have disappeared. But we are working with all of those organisations to try and help them find money through other means. So we haven't just walked away. As Helen said, she was at the museums 2 days ago talking to them about SPF. In an ideal world, we would love to be funding in the way that we were, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, where we were giving really good substantial grants to all our cultural organisations in the county, but we're just not in that position anymore. So that's where that came from, and we're working really hard with those organisations, and we'll continue to do so as much as they want us to be involved, to help them find external funding, both on their own and as part of the partnership with us. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of how we came to that. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Helen, I see you got your hand up. Do you want to come in as well?
Sorry, yeah, I should have mentioned earlier on, Helen has just reminded me, I completely slipped my mind, but going back to what we were saying about events, I think it's really important that obviously the aim within Craig Conway is very much about supporting the kind of the infrastructure and making sure that the capacity is there for communities and organisations to take the lead on delivering culture and creativity, in their own communities. And so one of the key elements of the SPF bid that we're putting together at the moment is to working with our colleagues in the events team, is to bid for funding for event infrastructure. So basically portable events infrastructure that would enable activities, performances to happen in a range of different locations, external locations, enabling places like Venue, Cymru and Theatr Colwyn to do a lot of outreach work, but also making that events kit and events infrastructure available to communities and to community-run festivals, so that they can also access the kit and the infrastructure that's needed to offer quality events for the community. And that would cover a range of different things, as well as the kind of the major events infrastructure. It would also allow us to do things like simple things like recording studio in a box or whatever, even on the smallest of scales, stuff that can go around to rural communities, community halls. People can just plug in and go and can be be enabled to develop creativity and talent across the county. So that's an example of where we are working very much in concert with the events team to look at how we can lever in funding for that. So I thought that was just worth mentioning in context of events. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Helen. You happy with that, Harry?
I'm happy with half of it. If I can come back very, very quickly. Look, thank you for the information around the events. That is appreciated. It's just to go back to this issue around this budget reduction, and I'm not sure if I didn't make myself clear, so I will have another go at that. Recognise that difficult decisions have had to be made in respect of the budget that was set only a couple months ago. I entirely understand that. My question is, when we make budget reductions that require democratic sign-off from this council, they're normally agreed at full council. We then look at them in detail and refine them at scrutiny, and then they go to cabinet. In this case, we've had 13 words in a spreadsheet in an agenda of over 200 pages. That is all of the information we've been provided with about this budget reduction. It is a very irregular way of doing budgets and democracy here in Conway. So I'm just interested to understand why a different approach was taken in this case.
Well, I think that might be better brought up in finance and resources, really, than the economy in place. So I think that's where you should be bringing that up. Thank you.
Can I just respond quickly to that as well?
Sure.
The budget also did come to FROSC twice before it went to full council. And it did give members opportunity to ask questions of the reductions we were offering up. I was at all the FROSC meetings. I was there available to answer those questions. So we have had an opportunity to ask questions about budget reductions.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Aaron. And I'm sure as Vice Chair at that time, you might have known that already, Councillor Harry.
If I may come back in entirely, but it doesn't escape the fact it would usually come back for further refinement and looking at in detail after the budget was set. So it's a different way of doing it. But yep, I take those points on board entirely.
All right, thank you. Can I bring in Conhorig Austin, who's been waiting very patiently?
Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nigel. And thank you for waking me up. I was starting to round off. I don't have a question, merely praise and gratitude to the two Helens for this report. And if I may praise Helen Goddard in particular for the presentation, it was very interesting. I was very pleased to see the Welsh language and culture being included here, not only in a traditional sense, but also in a more modern sense. You mentioned beatboxing, for instance. And Mrs. Councillor Austin Roberts will be especially pleased about that because she's a big fan of Ed Holden stroke Mr. Formula. So this report is praiseworthy, and we are very, very grateful to you for your work. And it is a difficult period, and I foresee things getting even harder for this particular part of the council, and so. But I am very, very happy to see that we've got conscientious and very hard-working staff. So my praise to you both, and thank you for your work. And may I also propose, Mr. Chairman, that we go with the recommendation and note the progress that has been made as detailed in the report. Thank you.
Austin, it's already been proposed, so if you're happy to second.
I'm very happy to second.
Diolch. Our next speaker is Councillor Chris again.
Thanks, Chair. I didn't realise Sarah was going to raise it during her speak. I don't think it's a prejudicial interest, but I should declare a personal interest in that I was a member of the management team of the Pride event, which took place on Colwyn Bay Promenade.
Okay, that will be noted. Thank you very much, Councillor Christopher. Well, we don't seem to have any other speakers, none online and none in the chamber. So we've got a proposer that we accept this excellent update on the Crow Conway and the Creator Spark cultural strategy. If members are happy, because this has been proposed by Councillor Harry and seconded by Councillor Conhorig Austin. If members are happy, please show by raising your hands. Okay. I think that's a full house. Thank you very much, members. It's very much appreciated. As that's the final item on our agenda, I will be calling this meeting closed. I wish you all a good evening, and those who are travelling home by car, drive safely. Thank you, and thank you to our excellent team of officers, and obviously our our excellent team of Crow, and the cultural strategy team for being with us this evening. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Good night.
Bye, good night.